All right, students, today we have a quick guided practice on Fiorillo number 32, one of the TMEA etudes for this year. Now, I will not be showing the music today due to copyright reasons, but if you need to purchase a copy of this music, I will try to put a link below in the description where you can find it. It is the International Music Company edition, edited by Ivan Galamian. Now, my goal for today is to give you some practice methods and tips that will apply throughout the entire etude so that you'll be able to use them no matter which part of the etude you're working on. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, Fiorillo 32 is essentially a duet that you play with yourself. Throughout the etude, the top notes on the staff are the melody line, and then the bottom notes on the staff are the accompaniment line. So the first thing that we need to do is just figure out how those parts sync up with each other. And to do that, I recommend first putting the violin down, because unless we understand how these parts sync up with our God-given voice and hands first, we are probably not going to play it very well on a wooden box and a stick. So what I recommend doing is setting a metronome to around 54, which is the lower end of the tempi suggested on TMEA's website for this etude. And then what we're going to try is to chant the upper notes, the rhythm of the melody, in our voices, while at the same time clapping the rhythm of the lower notes, the accompaniment part, in our hands. So we're trying to sync up the two parts. Now, if you find this difficult, then feel free to simply break the two parts apart, work on the accompaniment and the melody separately. But what we're going to try to do is do it together with a metronome. So let me show you how this would sound first, and then I'll give you a chance to pause the video and try it for yourself. Ta 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 da ta da da ta da ta da ta da ta da da ta 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 da ta da ta da ta ta da ta ta-da, 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 etc., etc. So give the video a pause, give it a try, and practice any parts that you want until you understand how the parts sync up. New day, new outfit. All right, so the next thing we need to talk about is the bow. So there's three main issues that I have to deal with in the bow in this piece. The first one is that I'm going to see some uneven bowings in this etude that require me to think about bow distribution. So we're going to look at that. Second of all, I need to work out the coordination of when I dip down onto those lower strings to play the double stops. So I need to kind of find a way to practice the coordination of that. That's our second main thing. And our third main thing is kind of our general overall sound quality, which we will talk about. So for this first issue of uneven bows, I just want you to look at measures 1 and 2. And you'll see that we, in the first measure, spend 3 beats playing down bow and only 1 beat playing up bow. Similarly, in the second measure, we spend 2 beats playing down bow and only 1 beat up bow. So that means over the course of these 2 measures, I'm already playing 5 beats down bow compared to only 2 beats up bow. Overall, what that means is that I'm going to have to save the bow a little bit more than usual on the down bows and then spend a little bit more bow on the up bows. A similar situation occurs in measures 5 and 6, where now I'm spending a lot more time up bow than down bow. In measure 5, I have 1 beat down bow, 3 beats up bow. In measure 6, I again have 1 beat down bow, 3 beats up bow. So now we're going to do exactly the opposite. We're going to spend more on the down bows and save more on the up bows. So I would recommend practicing this on open strings. Take whatever measure you want to look at and simply practice the bow distribution on an open string. So let's say in my first 2 measures, I would play something like this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 1. And all I've done there is just to determine how long each bow is, and I've practiced my bow distribution, saving on the down bow and spending on the up bows. You'll find that there are similar areas to look out throughout this etude. There's a lot of that type of uneven bowing, so be counting the beats throughout each measure. Now let's try an exercise to work on the coordination of the double stops. Practicing using open strings without playing the left hand fingers really simplifies the task at hand, so that's what we're going to try. If you look in measure 1, we start with a double stop between the D and the A strings, but we continue to sustain the A string, and the D string we drop after just 1/8 note. We're then going to proceed to dip back down onto the D string 2 more times as we sustain the A. So if I were to practice this without the left hand fingers, just on open strings, it would sound something like this. Now I can continue in a similar manner, simply playing on an open string, whatever string I would be playing if I were using my left hand fingers. So that would sound something like this. Be especially careful at spots like measure 3, beat 2, where we do shift up onto the A string, but we quickly have a string crossing over to the D string during the course of that triplet. So pause the video and try this and see if you can practice the etude in this manner up to the cut line. Finally, I'd like to comment that it's helpful in this etude to use a slightly slower bow speed than you ordinarily would. The fact is that when we're crossing strings so often and playing notes of different rhythmic values, it helps to increase the traction and grip of your bow stroke so that the notes speak clearly. You can see that if I use kind of a too fast bow speed here, it's hard to really control the sound and the notes are not speaking clearly. But if I just slow down the bow ever so slightly, it really helps to improve the sound quality and the clarity of the notes. Now let's talk about the left hand. In this piece, there are going to be a lot of opportunities to make your playing smoother by putting a finger down in between 2 strings at the same time. I call this covering the 5th because the strings are a perfect 5th apart, so when you put your finger in between them, you're covering a perfect 5th. Now, if you look at the beginning, obviously we have to start with the first finger on both strings. And I recommend doing a little exercise where you practice dropping the finger straight into place exactly between the 2 strings in a balanced way. So I would practice like this. Then drop my finger in bow, start again, until I can really reliably find that finger. Pause the video now and give that a try. Another spot where that comes in handy, but that's a little bit more veiled, is in measure 5, when I'm coming down this scale, it helps me a lot to place in beat 4 my first finger between the D and the A string. In other words, I don't wait until I'm finished playing the C in the upper voice to then move my first finger onto the A string, but I put it down on both strings to begin with at the beginning of that beat. So I would practice making sure that I have the 1 down on both strings. Pause the video now and give that a try. Similar spots include measure 10, where I like to put my second finger on both the G and the D strings on beat 1, so that by the time the second half of beat 2 rolls around, my second finger is already in place on that 32nd note F. So I put my second finger on both strings here at the beginning. That helps me to avoid any kind of jerky motions with my fingers from one string to the next string. Now, another issue is the coordination of string crossings, like what happens in measure 8, the second half of beat 3 into beat 4. These string crossings are tricky, and it's important that the D string fingers are prepared in advance. So what I like to do is I like to hold those B flats on the A string extra long and sort of tap my D string fingers to make sure they're prepared. That looks something like this. And so I'm tapping each D string note before I have to play it. It's something to help the brain really check in with the fingers before I actually perform the string crossing with the bow. Pause the video and try this spot. Another string crossing challenge occurs in measure 11, where I have to do a fast arpeggio from the G string to the D string. In particular, I'm concerned about the A flat second finger, which is the third of the 32nd notes on the second half of beat 1. I want to make sure that that A flat second finger is on the D string and down before I do the string crossing. So to that end, I like to often practice these little double stop passages where I'll make sure that the finger's prepared in advance by simply playing a double stop when I arrive at the string crossing. So that would look something like this. So that when I ultimately play the passage, I know that my left hand is used to putting down these two fingers at the same time. Pause the video and try that spot. Finally, it's critical that I understand every shift that I play in this etude. And what I mean by understand is that I know which finger shifts, how far, and how it coordinates with the bow. If you'll look at the first beat of measure 11, the first shift is very simple. I shift from first finger, first position, A flat, to first finger, third position, C. It's a shift of a major third. It occurs from the first finger to the first finger, and it's all within one bow. However, there's a much more unruly shift in beat 3 of the same measure. There, I'm beginning in fifth position, B flat on the D string, and I'm shifting to third position, G on the A string. The way that I perform this shift is I shift with the old finger on the old bow and on the old string. So since I'm finishing down bow in the fifth position, I will perform the shift at the end of that down bow, not the beginning of the following up bow. I'll also slide down with my first finger, since that's the finger that I leave off on, and I'll slide down with the first finger on the D string, since that's the D string that I'm leaving off on. So I will perform the shift at the end of this bow, and I shift down into the third position. Only now do I find my fourth finger on the A string. So the shift would look something like that. Pause the video here and see if you can understand what I mean by shifting at the end of the down bow and coordinating the shift with the first finger. Finally, here's me playing the first 16 bars of this etude so you can get a sense of how everything fits together.